I.B. Grace, 47. Proud progressive woman who dedicated her life to fighting patriarchal systems. I always believed I was raising Cooper the right way, teaching him about equality and dismantling toxic masculinity from day one. I refused to let him play with toy guns, insisted on gender-neutral everything, corrected him every time he showed problematic behaviors. When he was little and wanted to roughhouse with other boys, I'd redirect him to more collaborative activities. I made sure he understood that traditional masculinity was harmful, that he needed to be sensitive and aware of his privilege. I divorced his father when Cooper was 8 because honestly, that man was a walking example of everything wrong with society. I told Cooper it was better this way, that we didn't need a man to complete our family unit. Fast forward to now. Cooper is 25, married for 6 months to some woman named Emma. I haven't met her yet, but from what Cooper's mentioned in passing, she sounds traditional. Like, she actually cooks for him and takes his last name and all that regressive stuff. I tried to bite my tongue, but honestly it makes my skin crawl. I finally decide it's time to have a real conversation about this. Cooper comes over for dinner one evening. Seems tense from the moment he walks in. We need to talk, Mom. Okay, here we go. I sit down at my reclaimed wood dining table, pour myself some organic wine. What's on your mind, honey? I've been thinking a lot about my childhood lately, about how you raised me. His voice has this edge I've never heard before. I'm immediately defensive because I know where this is going. Cooper, everything I did was to help you become a better man than... Stop. He actually raises his hand like he's cutting me off. Just stop talking for once and listen to me. Excuse me? I feel my jaw clench, but decide to hear him out. Maybe he's finally ready to understand the gift I gave him. Do you remember when I was 10 and Tommy's dad taught us how to change a tire? Of course I remember. I was furious about the whole thing. You spent 20 minutes lecturing me about how mechanical skills aren't gendered and that Tommy's dad was reinforcing harmful stereotypes by only teaching the boys. Well, he was. You made me so embarrassed that I never went back to play at Tommy's house. Cooper, I was protecting you from... From what? From learning practical skills? From having male role models? From feeling proud of myself for accomplishing something? His voice is getting louder and I can see this rage building in his eyes. Do you remember what you told me when I came home crying because the other kids called me weird? Oh God, here we go, with the victimization narrative. You told me that tears were healthy emotional expression and that the other children were just acting out their socialized aggression. You never once considered that maybe, just maybe, constantly correcting everything I did naturally might be the problem. I was trying to raise you to be emotionally intelligent. You were trying to raise me to be everything Dad wasn't. You were so obsessed with proving your point about masculinity that you forgot I was actually a person, not your little social experiment. That stings, but I'm not about to let him gaslight me about my parenting choices. I cross my arms and lean back. I gave you every opportunity to explore your authentic self without the constraints of gender norms. Most mothers would have let me play football when I wanted to. Oh, for crying out loud. Most mothers wouldn't have made me write an essay about unpacking my privilege when I got in a fight defending myself from bullies. That essay was important for his development. Most mothers wouldn't have cancelled my birthday party because I invited too many boys and it might create an exclusionary dynamic. I'm standing up now because I will not sit here and be attacked for conscious parenting decisions. Cooper, everything I did was to make sure you didn't turn into another entitled aggressive. Like Dad, he's standing too now, towering over me. When did he get so tall? Is that what this was about? Your issues with your ex-husband? Your father was a perfect example of everything wrong with traditional masculinity. Emotionally unavailable, dismissive of women's perspectives. Dad was the only person in my life who ever let me just be myself without a lecture about societal implications. That's completely unfair. Dad let me fail at things without turning it into a teachable moment about gender dynamics. Dad never made me feel ashamed for wanting to be strong or competitive or protective. I feel my face getting hot because Cooper is completely rewriting history here. Your father abandoned us. You kicked him out because he wouldn't get on board with your ideology. Okay, that is not what happened. You kicked him out because he bought me a toy sword for my birthday and you two had a screaming match about normalizing violence. That sword represented centuries of patriarchal. It was a toy. I was 7 years old and I wanted to pretend to be a knight. He's yelling now. Actually yelling at me. But you couldn't just let me have that, could you? Everything had to be analyzed and deconstructed and turned into a lesson about oppression. I sit back down because my legs feel shaky. This is not how I expected this conversation to go. I was trying to give you tools to navigate a complex world. You were trying to prove a point. And you know what? It backfired completely. His laugh is bitter and it cuts right through me. You wanted to raise a man who respected women? Congratulations. I'm terrified of disappointing them because nothing I ever did was good enough for you. You wanted me to understand privilege? Great. I spent my entire adolescence apologizing for existing. You wanted me to reject toxic masculinity? Perfect. I had no idea how to be confident or assertive because you pathologized every natural instinct I had. This is spiraling completely out of control. I stand up and walk to the kitchen. Need a moment to collect myself. Cooper follows me, clearly not done. Do you want to know what really broke me, Mum? I don't answer because, honestly, I'm afraid to hear it. Senior year, when Emma and I started dating, I was so messed up about gender dynamics that I asked her permission to hold her hand. That actually sounds sweet and respectful. She looked at me like I was insane, asked me what was wrong with me, why I was acting like physical affection was some kind of political statement. I turn around to face him, and his eyes are actually wet now. I had to explain to my girlfriend that my mother raised me to believe that masculine desire was inherently predatory. That is not what I taught him. I had to unlearn 20 years of conditioning that told me wanting things made me a bad person. Cooper, that's not... Emma spent months helping me understand that being a man doesn't make me automatically evil. Oh, great. Here comes the praise for the traditional little housewife. She helped me realize that you don't respect women at all. You just hate men. That is completely unfair and totally wrong. I have dedicated my entire adult life to advancing women's rights. You've dedicated your life to proving that women are better than men. That's not the same thing. How is he not getting this? You raised me to believe that everything masculine was toxic. Everything feminine was superior. That's not equality, Mom. That's just sexism in the other direction. I need to sit down again, because this conversation has gone completely off the rails. Cooper is pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Do you know what Emma did when I told her about the tire changing thing? Probably rolled her eyes at my progressive parenting methods. She asked me if I wanted to learn how to change a tire, and when I said yes, she taught me. No lecture about gender roles. No analysis of societal expectations. She just helped me learn something I wanted to know. That sounds incredibly oversimplified. And when I told her I felt guilty for wanting to provide for our family financially, she didn't give me a dissertation about internalized patriarchy. Well, maybe she should have. She told me that wanting to take care of people you love is normal and healthy, regardless of gender. I'm starting to see where this is headed. Emma sounds very traditional. I try to keep the judgment out of my voice, but probably fail. She is. And you know what? That doesn't make her oppressed or brainwashed or any of the other things you'd probably call her. I mean, if the shoe fits. She chose to take my last name because she wanted to. She likes cooking because she finds it relaxing. She wants kids and actually looks forward to raising them. Sounds like she's never questioned any of the systems designed to limit her potential. She's everything you taught me to pity. And she's the strongest, most confident person I've ever met. That's confusing, actually. How can she be strong if she's conforming to traditional gender roles? Cooper, I just want you to be aware that there are societal pressures that might make Emma feel like she has to. Stop. Just stop analyzing my wife like she's a case study. His voice is cold now. Colder than I've ever heard it. Emma doesn't need you to save her from her own choices. She doesn't need your enlightenment or your pity or your theories about internalized misogyny. I stand up and walk to the window, looking out at my community garden. Some of the neighborhood women should be here soon for our weekly feminist book club. I try to center myself, remember who I am and what I stand for. I'm not analyzing anyone. I'm just concerned that you're concerned that my wife is happy with choices you disapprove of. I turn back to face him. You're concerned that maybe your entire worldview might be wrong. That hits different than I expected it to. Because honestly, seeing Cooper this angry, this hurt, it's shaking something loose. My worldview empowered me to leave an unhappy marriage and build a life on my own terms. Your worldview destroyed our family and left me unable to form healthy relationships for years. I sit down heavily on my ethically sourced cotton couch. Cooper sits across from me, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Do you want to know the worst part? Honestly, not sure I do, but not anyway. I actually believed for the longest time that it was my fault, that I was just inherently flawed because I couldn't be the kind of son you wanted. I feel tears starting and try to blink them away. This was never supposed to happen. I gave him every advantage, every tool to navigate an unjust world. It wasn't until I met Emma that I realized the problem wasn't me. The problem was that you never accepted who I actually was. I look up at him, and his face is so sad. You loved the idea of raising an enlightened man more than you loved your actual son. That's not true. That's not fair. I love Cooper more than anything in this world. I love you. You love your version of me, the version that validates all your beliefs about gender and society. You've never loved the version of me that wants to be strong, that wants to protect people, that wants to build things and fix things and compete with other men. I stand up because I need to move, need to do something with my hands. I start straightening books on my bookshelf, all the feminist theory that guided my parenting. Those impulses you're talking about, Cooper, they're socialized. They're products of a system they're part of who I am. I spin around to face him. No, they're not. They're learned behaviors that you can unlearn with enough awareness. Listen to yourself right now. His voice is quiet, but there's something dangerous in it. You literally cannot accept that I might have natural inclinations that don't fit your ideology. Even now, when I'm telling you how much damage this did to me, you're still trying to convince me that my feelings are wrong. I open my mouth to respond, but he holds up his hand again. I'm not done. I sit back down because clearly this conversation is far from over. Emma and I have been married for 6 months now, and every day I'm more grateful that she's nothing like you. That stings more than it should. When I come home from work, stressed out, she doesn't lecture me about toxic masculine workplace culture. She asks if I want to talk about it, or if I'd rather just decompress. Sounds like she's enabling his avoidance of difficult conversations. When I want to go out with my friends, she doesn't interrogate me about whether we're engaging in problematic bonding rituals. She tells me to have fun and be safe. Cooper, I was trying to help you think critically. You were trying to control how I thought. There's a difference. I stand up and start pacing again. Emma trusts me to be a good person without constant supervision and correction. Emma lets me open doors for her and carry heavy things, not because she's weak, but because she knows I like taking care of her. Emma doesn't see every gesture of affection or protection as evidence of internalized oppression. I feel myself getting defensive again, because this all sounds very familiar. Sounds like every relationship I've ever criticized for perpetuating harmful dynamics. Those behaviors you're describing, they reinforce gender hierarchies that make us both happy. I pause because that's not the response I expected. Emma feels loved when I take care of her. I feel fulfilled when I can provide and protect. We both benefit from the dynamic. But that's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps oppressive systems in place. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's not reinforcing harmful. Why does everything have to be political with you? His voice cracks a little and it breaks something in my chest. Why can't you just be happy that I found someone who loves me? I sink down onto the couch because suddenly I feel exhausted. I am happy that you found love. I just worry that I'm not miserable enough to prove your theories right. I look up sharply because that's not fair at all. You want my marriage to fail because if Emma and I are happy together, it means everything you taught me was wrong. I stand up abruptly because I will not sit here and be accused of wanting my son's marriage to fail. That is absolutely not true. Then why haven't you asked to meet her? I freeze because honestly, I hadn't realized he noticed. We've been together for 2 years, married for 6 months, and you've never once suggested we all have dinner. Because honestly, I'm not sure I'm ready to meet someone who represents everything I've spent my adult life fighting against. I've been busy with work and you've been avoiding her because you know that if you meet her and like her, it'll force you to question everything. I walk back to the kitchen and pour myself more wine. I need something to do with my hands. Cooper follows me again. My wife is nothing like you, Mom. That's why I'm happy. The words hit like a physical blow. I set down the wine glass carefully because my hands are shaking. That's a cruel thing to say. It's a true thing to say. I turn to face him, and there's no anger left in his expression, just sadness. Emma doesn't see every interaction through the lens of gender warfare. She doesn't analyze every conversation for hidden power dynamics. She doesn't treat me like I'm inherently dangerous because I'm male. I lean against the counter because my legs feel unsteady again. I never treated you like you were dangerous. You treated me like I was one good influence away from becoming a rapist. That word hits the air between us like a slap. Every time I showed interest in a girl, you gave me lectures about consent that made it sound like male sexuality was inherently predatory. Every time I got frustrated or angry, you acted like I was on the verge of becoming violent. Every time I wanted to compete or win at something, you made it about toxic masculinity instead of normal human drive. I slide down the cabinet until I'm sitting on the kitchen floor. This is not how I remember any of this. Cooper sits down across from me, his back against the refrigerator. Do you remember when I made varsity wrestling my junior year? Of course I remember. I was horrified. You refused to come to a single match because you said wrestling celebrated aggression and dominance. Well, it does. Do you know what that felt like? To have your own mother refuse to watch you succeed at something you'd worked years to achieve? I couldn't support an activity that promoted violence. It wasn't violence. It was sport. It was discipline and strategy and pushing myself to be better. He's looking at me with this expression I can't read. But you couldn't see that because it didn't fit your narrative about healthy masculinity. I remember watching from the parking lot once, seeing Cooper on the mat. He looked so focused, so capable. But I couldn't get past what wrestling represented. That sport, those activities, they're designed to reinforce harmful hierarchies. They're designed to help people grow and challenge themselves. But you couldn't see that because you'd already decided that anything traditionally masculine was automatically bad. I pull my knees up to my chest. I'm feeling smaller than I have in years. I was trying to protect you from becoming like Dad? I nod because that's exactly what I was afraid of. Dad wasn't a bad person because he was traditionally masculine, Mom. Dad was a bad husband because you two were incompatible. That stops me cold. Because I've spent so many years conflating those two things. You turned your marriage problems into a crusade against masculinity itself. You decided that the solution to having one relationship with a man who didn't understand you was to raise a son who would never challenge or disagree with any woman. I start crying properly now because something about that rings uncomfortably true. I wasn't trying to. You were trying to create the perfect feminist man. But what you actually created was a person so afraid of his own instincts that he couldn't function in normal relationships. I look across the kitchen at my son. Really look at him. He's so much like his father physically, but I've been so focused on preventing him from becoming emotionally similar that I never saw who he actually was. Cooper, I'm sorry if some of my methods they weren't just wrong methods, Mom. The entire premise was wrong. I wipe my eyes with the back of my hand. I feel like the ground is shifting underneath me. You assumed that traditional gender roles were inherently oppressive, so you tried to eliminate them completely. But what if some people actually thrive in traditional roles? What if some of those patterns exist because they work for a lot of people? This goes against everything I've believed for decades. Everything I've read, every theory that shaped how I raised him. Those roles exist because of centuries of patriarchal conditioning. Or maybe they exist because men and women are actually different in some ways, and those differences can be complementary instead of competitive. I stand up and walk to the sink, splash cold water on my face. I look out the window and see my neighbor bringing in her laundry. She's married to a man who works construction, has 3 kids, seems happy. I've always assumed she just didn't know any better. Emma doesn't think our marriage is a political statement, Cooper says behind me. She doesn't think she's betraying feminism by enjoying taking care of our home. She doesn't think I'm oppressing her when I want to pay for dinner or fix things around the house. I turn back to face him. But don't you see how those dynamics can become problematic if what? If we're both happy with them? He stands up too, leans against the doorframe. If they make us both feel valued and loved and fulfilled? This is so hard to wrap my head around, because I've spent so many years believing that happiness within traditional roles was just internalized oppression. What if the problem isn't traditional gender roles? Cooper continues. What if the problem is when people are forced into roles that don't fit them? What if the solution isn't to eliminate all roles, but to let people choose the ones that work for them? I sit down at the kitchen table, head in my hands. I feel like my entire worldview is being deconstructed in real time. Your father and I weren't unhappy because he was masculine and I was feminine. We were unhappy because we wanted different things and couldn't find a way to compromise. I look up at Cooper, and he's watching me with something that might be sympathy. You blamed masculinity for your marriage failing, but maybe you just weren't compatible people. Dad needed someone who appreciated his traditional approach to relationships. You needed someone who shared your progressive values. Neither of you was wrong. You just weren't right for each other. This is such a simple explanation, but it's never occurred to me before. I've been so invested in the idea that my ex-husband represented everything wrong with society. But by making it about gender politics instead of personal compatibility, you taught me that my natural inclinations were morally wrong. I feel tears starting again, because I'm beginning to see how much damage I might have done. When Emma and I disagree about something, we talk it out like adults. She doesn't assume my perspective is automatically invalid because I'm male. I don't assume her choices are internalized oppression because she's female. We just respect each other as individuals. That sounds so simple, but somehow I never modeled that kind of relationship for Cooper. Every relationship I had after your father, I approached like a political battlefield. I was so determined never to be submissive again that I made partnership impossible. I taught you that relationships between men and women were inherently adversarial. I look around my kitchen, decorated with feminist art and inspirational quotes about women's empowerment. Suddenly, it feels less like a celebration of strength and more like a monument to resentment. Do you think? I pause because this is hard to ask. Do you think I can meet Emma? Cooper's whole face changes, like he wasn't expecting this. I'd like to understand what makes her so different from me. Maybe I can learn something. He's quiet for a long moment, studying my face. She's not going to debate you about gender theory. I nod because honestly, that sounds like a relief. She's not going to validate your assumptions about traditional women being oppressed. I nod again, though this feels scarier. And she's probably going to like you, which might be the hardest part of all. That last part hits unexpectedly, because I've been so invested in the idea that traditional women and feminist women are natural enemies. Why would that be the hardest part? Because it's easier to dismiss people when you can hate them. If you like Emma, you'll have to accept that there are multiple ways to be a strong woman. You'll have to accept that your way isn't the only right way. I stand up and walk to the calendar on my refrigerator. It's full of feminist book club meetings and activism events, all activities designed to reinforce what I already believe. When could you both come for dinner? Cooper looks surprised but pleased. Really? Really. I want to understand what I've been missing. I want to understand why my son is happy with someone so different from me. And maybe I want to understand why that's okay. He walks over and hugs me. The first real hug we've had in years. I feel how tall and strong he is, how much like his father. For the first time, that doesn't feel like a threat. Cooper? Yeah? I'm sorry I tried to change who you were. I'm sorry I made you feel like being yourself was wrong. I feel him relax against me. I know you were trying to help, Mom. I know you thought you were doing the right thing. But maybe next time you can just love someone for who they are, instead of trying to improve them. I pull back to look at him. Is there going to be a next time? He grins, and it's the first real smile I've seen from him in months. Emma wants kids someday, and I want them to know their grandmother. But they're going to know the real you, not the ideology. I nod because I understand what he's asking. The real me might be messier than the ideology. The real you is probably more interesting than the ideology. He heads toward the door, then turns back. Mom, Emma makes amazing pot roast. Just don't ask her about the feminist implications of traditional cooking, okay? I laugh despite myself. I'll try to restrain myself. Good, because if you make her cry, you'll have to deal with me. There's something in his voice when he says it, something protective and sure. And for the first time, instead of worrying about toxic masculinity, I feel proud. I think Emma's lucky to have someone who cares about her so much. She is. And I'm lucky to have someone who lets me care about her without making it a political issue. After he leaves, I sit alone in my kitchen for a long time. I look around at all the symbols of my feminist awakening. The books about dismantling patriarchy, the art celebrating women's independence. None of it feels wrong exactly, but it feels incomplete. Like I've been seeing only half the picture. I think about Emma, this woman I've never met who somehow helped my son become confident and happy. I think about Cooper, how much more relaxed he seemed when talking about his wife than he's ever been talking to me. I think about all the years I spent trying to protect him from becoming like his father. Maybe the problem wasn't that his father was traditionally masculine. Maybe the problem was that I never learned how to appreciate traditionally masculine qualities. I pour myself another glass of wine and sit down with my phone. I scroll through photos Cooper has posted of Emma. She's pretty, in a natural way, always smiling. In every picture with Cooper, they both look genuinely happy. Not performing happiness for social media, just... There's one photo of them at some kind of outdoor festival. Cooper has his arm around her shoulders. She's leaning into him. They look like they fit together, like they're not fighting against their natural instincts, but embracing them. I put down the phone and really think about what Cooper said. About Emma helping him learn that wanting to provide and protect wasn't toxic. About her letting him be strong without making him feel guilty about it. About them both choosing traditional roles because those roles made them happy. Maybe the real feminism isn't about eliminating gender roles. Maybe it's about making sure people have the freedom to choose the roles that work for them, whether those roles are traditional or progressive or something in between. I think about my own life, my determination to prove I didn't need a man, how I turned independence into isolation, strength into rigidity, how I made my son pay for his father's failures, how I almost lost him because I couldn't see past my own anger. I text Cooper, "Thank you for being honest with me today. It was hard to hear, but I needed to hear it. Can't wait to meet Emma." His response comes back quickly. "Love you, Mom. Emma's excited to meet you too." I smile because maybe it's not too late to learn a different way of being. Maybe it's not too late to understand that there are many ways to be strong. Maybe my son found something I never could because I taught him everything was a battle. But Emma taught him that some things could just be love.